Your income does not determine your outcome. Welcome back again to another fundamentals video. I'm Joseph Benjo, the G silent. So what do I mean by your income does not determine your outcome? Well, Christ said in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, watch out for greed. Beware of greediness. Beware of covetousness. Because a man's life does not consist in the abundance of the things that he possesses. What you have doesn't determine how great you are. You know, there seems to be two extreme sides when it comes to money and Christians. There's one group that believes all Christians should be poor. You know what I mean? If you poor, you godly. All right? That's some people believe that. And then there's the other people who believe that every Christian should be rich. The godly Christians are the rich ones. And if you're godly, God's gonna make you rich. There's two extreme sides. One side thinks that all the godly Christians are the poor ones, and the other side thinks that all the godly Christians are the ones that are rich. According to what Christ taught, both sides are wrong. Poverty is not always a sign of holiness or godliness, and riches or material possessions are not always a sign of godliness. What you have does not determine who you are. Your income does not determine your outcome. There was a rich man named Solomon. He was a king. He was actually one of the kings, I think the third king, if I'm not mistaken, the third king of Israel. He was rich. God had visited him in a dream one night and asked him, what do you want? What do you want? After he gave a big offering to the Lord, and Solomon, instead of asking for his enemies to die, or riches, or fame, or long life, he asked God for wisdom to lead his people. Wisdom and understanding, knowledge and wisdom to lead his people the right way. And God said, oh, because of that, because you didn't even ask for the typical things that people ask for, the enemies to die, a lot of money, long life and prosperity, You didn't ask for that. I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna give you riches. And matter of fact, I'm not gonna just give you riches. I'm gonna give you riches like no other king before you has had, and no other king in the future will have. Only God can say something like that. So Solomon was the richest king ever. Now here's an interesting thing. In Luke chapter 7, Christ talks about John the Baptist. And he says that John the Baptist was the greatest prophet ever to live. Greater than Elisha, greater than Elijah, David, Moses, Abraham, Daniel, Joseph, Solomon. The greatest ever to live. And we know by scripture that John the Baptist was not rich. He wasn't rich. As a matter of fact, he ate locusts. He ate locusts and honey. And he wore camel's hair around his loins, a girdle around his loins. He wasn't the richest, but Christ said he was the greatest prophet ever to live. So that means he's saying John the Baptist is greater than Solomon. So if we just take that picture right there, we can tell that more money doesn't equal more godly. More financial blessings doesn't mean that that person is a better Christian. Because Solomon actually ended up pretty bad. He had a lot of women in his life. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. I'm talking about like 1,000. 300 concubines and 700 wives.
What?
He had a lot of women, and he ended badly. If Solomon didn't end bad, a lot of people would not see the need for Christ. Because if you think about it, Solomon didn't have Jesus. He was a godly man at one point, and he believed in the Lord. He served God, but Christ hadn't come yet. He didn't even know Jesus. He was before Jesus, and he was very wise, very rich at one point, and very godly. But towards the end of his life, he fell off. He started worshiping idols, I believe, and the women took him astray. Now, if he would have ended up wonderful, people would actually aspire to be like Solomon instead of Jesus. As a matter of fact, some people still aspire to be like Solomon, even though he ended badly. But there we go. Christ is telling us that what you have does not determine who you are. What you have doesn't put value to your life. You are not what you wear. You are not what you eat. You are more than what you eat, and you are more than what you wear. So that's one thing that really is kind of seen as backwards when it comes to a Christ-like mindset. A lot of Christians believe that the way that the Lord blesses them, or the best way that the Lord will bless them, is through wealth, through financial things, through a promotion at work, a new car, new house, pretty much wealth or money. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, the Lord can bless us with a physical thing. He can give us a new home. If we ask him for a new home, he can give it to us. He can give us a promotion at work. Cool. But these are not always the signs of a blessing from the Lord. And speaking of that, speaking of work, you may have heard this statement, oh, he's making a good amount of money. He's working for so-and-so and he's making a good amount of money. Oh, I got this new job and they're paying me well, you know. Well, let's think about this. What is a good amount of money? What would you call a good amount of money? If someone says, oh, they're making a good amount of money, what figure would that be to you? Some people would say 6 figures. Some people would say more. Some people would say, oh, a good amount of money is an amount of money that takes care of my family and their needs. Some people would say that a good amount of money is an amount of money that allows me to live comfortably, and so on and so on. Well, here's the truth. A good amount of money does not have a figure when it comes to the Christian, or anyone at that matter. A good amount of money is an amount of money, or the amount of money, that will draw you closer to the one who's good. Simple. And therefore, that amount has no absolute value. There's no specific amount that we can put on that. A good amount of money is the amount of money that draws you or causes you to draw closer to the Lord. Now, the beautiful thing about that is that number may be different for everyone. Some people, if they get a financial blessing, it would actually draw them closer to the Lord over time. And some people, if they get a financial blessing, they would actually stray away from the Lord. Now, of course, we could probably agree that any amount of money that causes us to draw away from the Lord, away from the one who's good, it would be kind of hard to call that a good amount of money if it doesn't lead us to the one who is good. Now that being said, we should know that sometimes a good amount of money, quote unquote, is a lower amount of money. Sometimes a low amount of money causes us to draw closer to the Lord. For example, the prodigal son, he asked his dad for his quote unquote inheritance. His dad gave it to him. And after he received his inheritance, his possessions increased, at least for that moment. And shortly after that, he left his father. He started living a reckless life, sleeping around and so forth. That amount of money was not good for him. Now, if we move forward in the story, there was a point where that son had no possessions, pretty much nothing, $0. And shortly after that, he went back to his father. Now, that amount of money was good for him at that moment. It drew him closer to his father, which is a picture of God the Father. So a good amount of money is not a certain figure. So next time you hear someone's making a good amount of money, think twice. If that amount of money is drawing them away from the Lord, away from the things of Christ, then that money is not necessarily good for them. But if it's causing them to draw closer to Christ, the teachings of Christ, the way of the lifestyle of Jesus, loving others, dying to self, sacrificing their lusts, and surrendering to the Lord, then that can be considered a good amount of money. And we have to check our lives. When there's an increase of physical things in our lives, are we more Christ-like or are we less Christ-like? Are we more logical and less biblical? Do we rely more on our own wisdom or do we rely more on the Lord? These are questions we can ask ourselves. So, that's about it for this video. Just remember, your income does not determine your outcome. More does not always mean better, and less does not always mean worse.
Come on,